Hello everybody and welcome to Honest Science Fiction Reviews. This is the review for the movie Snowpiercer, released in 2014, a movie I was told to watch that is rated 95% on Rotten Tomatoes and was considered to be one of the best science fiction movies of the year, bringing me the motivation to make this review. I would like to give you my 2 cents first on whether I believe you should watch this, and I will do that before moving into some spoilers, so just that you know this review will contain a great deal of spoilers and is meant to generate discussion of the film and only serve as a suggestion about whether one should see it or not for the following 30 seconds. So let's begin. For fans of action movies and weird high-concept ideas, this movie succeeds. But if you're expecting complex characters or broad social commentary, Snowpiercer comes up short, where it could have otherwise offered so much more. The conversations that serve to advance the plot and create depth of character are strikingly trivial and cliched. However, the action sequences are well made, necessarily brutal, bloody, and help reinforce the basic desolation and hopelessness that humanity is facing in this post-apocalyptic world. If you get easily bored with shallow or disappointing stories, this movie is not for you, as it will probably leave a bad taste in your mouth as it did mine. So I am sort of on the fence about recommending it, but I am a little under that 50% mark. It is kind of a disappointing movie in general. You have been warned about the spoilers. Please consider stopping this now, watching the movie, and returning to this video if you'd like to join the conversation, post a comment, and all of that. Let's begin. The cliché characters. The reluctant leader is reluctant, and if you didn't know this already, you get a number of conversational scenes with dialogue, and yes, it is this blatantly on the nose.
And when that happens, you're gonna have to take over. You're gonna have to run the train.
I'm not a leader.
I don't know. I think you'd be pretty good if you ask me.
Though the premise of this film may be a bit strange, a train circling the Earth, I'm perfectly fine with it. And if Bong Joon-ho, the director, wants to remind us not to look too deeply into some of the plot holes or some of the faulty science, such as a human arm freezing solid in 7 minutes, I'm fine with that allowance. Allegorical science fiction should not be held to the same scrutiny as films that really want to sell the viewer on the plausibility. That said, when hard science fiction takes a back seat, then the concepts and allegory should come to the fore. Not to mention opportunities where the film could otherwise convince you it has thought through its science and it has thought through its plot holes, those should also be filled. This is not the case with Snowpiercer. For instance, demonstrating that the threat of power is more powerful than the ability to follow through is a wonderful commentary on America's current militarized police force, and it is reflected well in the fact that security forces have no bullets in their guns. But this is the only instance of a powerful concept in the film brought to bear by the circumstances of the sci-fi element, that everything ever known ever is going to be scarce unless it can be recycled, save water, which there is still plenty of outside. The use of psychotropic drugs to assuage the misery of the dystopian reality. Now this has a great potential, but we are not given much insight into the nature of the chronal substance, only that it is an industrial byproduct, and due to its volatility, I can't help but think that this comes down to something like huffing gas. Surely, a competent chemist on board could produce a lifetime supply of something more creative. Further, the addiction reduces a key character to little more than a petty drug-seeking addict. Every opportunity he has to show us that he is more than just a drug addict is always reduced to him being just a drug addict. And our protagonist, despite his utter unlikability, has quite a daunting mission: to run full bore into a gauntlet of weapons that far outmatch those of his own forces. This is an opportunity to impress the audience with MacGyver-like inventiveness and savvy battle tactics, to innovate what materials he has on hand and what materials he gains along his quest. There's but one instance where this occurs, and this succeeds exceedingly well, despite conjuring up an allegorical reference to the Olympics of all things. This is solidarity amongst all human races, sure, why not? But ultimately, this serves to remind us that not all that much else is creative about his strategy. I am a believer that good science fiction brings something to bear upon our real world and the human condition. The commentary in this film has very little to offer, and what it offers is oftentimes trite. We have a society and microcosm, certainly, but it is shedding very little light upon our world, other than the fact that class separation exists whatsoever. More provocative dystopian films display a society at odds with technology or the circumstances of a dystopian world. The first season of the recent Battlestar Galactica reboot tackles a very similar premise and finds so much more to consider regarding the necessary brutality and despotism in the face of human annihilation. And this is all present without even involving the Cylon enemy. What are the inner lives of the upper class folks like? What hopes, dreams, ambitions do they themselves possess? Are they okay with being on a 17-year vacation? We do have a successful scene involving the indoctrination of the youth, though the teacher overplays the part of the mad sycophant so much that it drowns out any ability to take the scene seriously. And this leads us to our final showdown, the train's boss himself. Will he be a madman, a computer, a fantasy? Not really. He's just kind of a practical realist. He tells us everything we already know about society, about the equilibrium of ecosystems. We already know all of this. Why did he treat those on the back of the train so badly? Was that entirely necessary? He attributes this to an accelerated natural selection, but isn't that a contradiction of terms altogether? He speaks on the nature of revolts as contributing toward natural selection, and that could be interesting, but the issue at stake is never really driven home. He changes the subject to reveal the protagonist's spiritual aide was a co-conspirator. But we have no way of confirming this. After all, he could easily eavesdrop on the entire train. But if he is telling the truth, which is more interesting than him making it up, it doesn't do anything to reflect upon the larger microcosm or the characters themselves, shallow as they have been so far. Though this is a surprise, it doesn't really mean much to the story. The plot thread of the missing children adds a nice touch, but we aren't really made to understand the necessity of imposing such brutality upon a lower class. In the absence of this commentary, I'm reminded of how well District 9 and its counterpart, Elysium, sheds light upon the problem of population and underclass. The final ending is a lovely twist on the traditional happy ending, but the opportunity to really deliver on the premise and leave the audience thinking is lost. Is it possible humanity will endure? Was the avalanche inevitable anyway? The premise has so much potential. Why not leave us with an epilogue that projects into the future?